have the directors from Ministry of Commerce and directors from Ministry of Justice, Kaduna State. We also have state representation from Niger State, directors of Agriculture, Commerce, and Justice. And we also have Smedan here. And the reason is what we're about to do is historical in the sense that this is the first time in the history of Nigeria we're going to be having soil productivity rating map that's interactive. And so we've invited stakeholders from Niger and Kaduna State to witness this. And I think they are committed to trying to replicate this. So this is the first, and it's good that this is from the Benue State is taking the lead in this. And we'll also recognize Professor Aminu Ali, and please ask him to please come to the high table. Professor Aminu Ali is a professor at JS Dhaka University, and he's worked with us, Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project. He's come to Michigan State University as a visiting professor, and we've had several interactions with him since then. And we also have Professor Philip Agbe, and please come to the high table side. Again, Professor Philip Agbe has worked with the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project, and he's from JS Dhaka University, and he's also been with us at Michigan State University. Now, the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Activity, which is a follow-on to the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project, is jointly implemented by Michigan State University, which is a land-grant university, and IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute. Now, Michigan State University has extended lots of collaboration, and we have a very strong working relationship with JS Dhaka University. So as we move far along, we also have, of course, several senior colleagues in academia and the policy process who are online, and at some point we will then also engage with them. Well, the next thing on the agenda is welcome address by Professor Sawida Lido-Botasie, who is the principal investigator of the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project. And I should add that she's recently been appointed by by President Joe Biden to serve on BIFAG. And that's a very, very important position in the sense that they will be providing advisory services to the United States government, to the President of the US, on issues having to do with food safety, food security, generally on agriculture. And so we are honored to have her give us the welcome address. Professor Lido-Botasie, please could you start?
Okay, so good morning everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you so much. So yes, I just want to start on all the existing protocol and welcome all our guests, both those in person and online. Thank you for taking the time to join us today on this event that I would call a sort of a celebration of a process that has led us to the day where we can talk about soil productivity index rating map in Benue State that is interactive, and which I think is just a step in a process that has started way before where we came in and will continue hopefully way beyond where we are today. But we still want to recognize the steps that have been made where we are today with a hope towards improving the ability of Nigerian farmers to increase their productivity with adequate information and then subsequently adopted practices based on that information. I just want to start this welcome by talking a little bit about the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project and the subsequent project called Nigerian Agricultural Policy Activity, and sort of how it links to where we are today. The Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project and the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Activity are Feed the Future projects, generously funded by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID Nigeria. The project has three key objectives. The first is to strengthen the national capacity for greater evidence-based policy processes in the broader field of agriculture through strengthening the capacity of Nigerian analysts to carry out research and then disseminate relevant evidence coming from that research. The second objective is to just promote improved policy dialogue amongst all stakeholders in the agricultural sector. Get all of us who are involved in agriculture, from the research to the policy implementation, private sector, all the key stakeholders, increase our communication and letting that communication be based on evidence. And then the third objective is to support federal and state governments and their efforts to improve their own capacity to plan and implement effective policies and programs, and to use the research findings coming out of research being done within the broader field of agriculture for those decisions and for those programs. In order to achieve this, the policy project really has three core components. The first is the set of activities that are centered around trying to strengthen the skills and training of scholars and also the institutional capacity. And then the second is activities that are trying to encourage and support collaborative research. And collaborative research means that you have multiple individuals coming together to do research. Many times this can be across disciplines, but it can also be across sectors. So you can have private sector with government and academia coming together to study an issue that has relevance to all of those stakeholders in a way that can actually ensure that the correct questions are being asked and that the answers that are being generated are relevant to these stakeholders. And then together, these activities are trying to strengthen the policy process broadly by ensuring that it's evidence-based. Over the last 6 years, the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project and the subsequent Nigerian Agricultural Policy activity have been able to produce a lot of research outputs. And so it's important to acknowledge those numbers. Over 100 research outputs, including working papers, policy briefs, and peer-reviewed journal articles. Also been able to use non-technical communication pieces, some in local languages. This is an important part of the process because it's important for us to ensure that when research is conducted, the findings of research don't just sit on our shelves, but that we take those research and we appropriately package them for various stakeholders. And as you see on my right, you'll see that we have what we call pamphlets. And these pamphlets take technical findings from research and convert them into very simple pieces that communicate the key message as is relevant to a particular stakeholder. So one of the studies that was done by one of our scholars, Dr. FUT Mina, was about how to reduce post-harvest loss amongst in the onion value chain. She took this research and just put together a short pamphlet that can be circulated to ministry, but also to traders about how they can reduce the loss of onions as it is being transported across Nigeria. Another scholar looked at issues about affordable diet, and she was really focused on Benue State, trying to document how, with local materials and local foods that are available in Benue State, still have a diverse, a healthy diet that is balanced without it being so expensive, an affordable diet that is balanced in the nutrients that an individual would require. So in our research, we try to take technical findings from journal articles and condense them into something that is very relevant. It can be a pamphlet, it can be a manual, it can be a video, and we put this where possible in local languages so that to broaden the reach of this information to the stakeholders across multiple sectors. This project has covered multiple topics. Today we'll be talking about soil health, but there's also been research done on issues related to food safety, food and nutrition security, agricultural productivity more broadly, food systems transformation, issues related to macroeconomy, political economy, as well as agricultural policy, and then issues also related to climate change and resilience. Over 1,000 Nigerians across 8 states and Abuja have actually been reached directly through the dissemination of these research findings through presentations, policy briefs, and these pamphlet that I mentioned. As was mentioned earlier, this project is jointly implemented by Michigan State University and the International Food Policy Research Institute. But now I want to move a little bit closer to what we are celebrating today, which is the work of our early career scholars. One of the key elements of the Nigerian Cultural Policy Project was the idea of a scholars program based on this concept of multum in parvo. This is a Latin phrase that means much in a little. And this is the idea that by investing deeply in few, you can reach many, many more. You can have a multiplier effect by investing deeply and purposefully in few. This concept of our scholars program leverage on this idea of multum in parvo, and also this idea of train one to train others, which is one of the ways in which you can have this multum in parvo effect. This project brought 13 young Nigerian scholars who were competitively selected from over about 200 applicants, and they were masters and PhD students at the time. And the project brought these students to Michigan State University. Master's students spent 1 semester, and PhD students spent 2 semesters on equivalent of an academic year. It also brought their advisors to Michigan State University, and the advisors came and spent about one month. This program really has helped us to strengthen the network of scholars working on various issues, and has allowed us to also develop some strong ties with Benue State. At the university level, we're actually able to have 3 students who were competitively selected from these over 200 applicants that came from the Federal University of Agriculture, Markurdi then, which is the JS Tapa University. We have Mr. Philip Egati, who was a soil science master's student. We also have Mrs. Hepzibah Onyeje, who was an agricultural economist and is now Dr. Mrs. Hepzibah Onyeje. We also had Mrs. Blessed Agada then, who is also now Dr. Blessed Agada. We're also fortunate to have their illustrious professors, Professor Godwin Adu, Professor Philip Adler, and Professor Aminu Ali, come to Michigan State University, share their knowledge with us here on their work in Nigeria and their interactions even beyond Nigeria at a continental level and a global level. They were also able to interact with MSU faculty working in similar areas and also understand a little bit more about the system. And on top of that, we had strong interaction, mutual learning, as we say. We have also been fortunate under the Nigeria Agricultural Policy Project to engage with various personnel at the Benue State Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources. People like Mr. Lucky Izobo, who was a key proponent and we have worked very closely with for multiple years. Mr. Idache, alongside engagement with extension agents in the state, directors and divisional officers from the various local governments. So that with a rich experience in Benue State, and we have similar experiences across multiple Nigeria through this project. One of the key elements of the Scholars Program is that the training that the students and scholars receive while at Michigan State University is combined with long-term mentoring and support that continues even when they return to Nigeria. So the Blessing, who is going to be talking to us in a few minutes, actually spent time in Michigan State several years ago, but she continues to work very closely with the project, and not only supporting project activities of the donors, our stakeholders, but also taking her own work. But I will try to round up by just talking a little bit about what the benefits see in approach of multum in parvo, investing deeply in it, and then supporting them to have this multiplier effect. These scholars alone have over 40 research publications. Scholars returning to Nigeria have trained over 1,200 people on issues related to data collection and analysis. This is really critical for evidence generation and for providing evidence-based policy recommendations. We need to have data, and we need to analyze that data, and then communicate findings. These scholars have trained others across Nigerian universities and at various industries on data collection and analysis. The scholars have also incorporated what they have learned when they came to Michigan State University and in their own research into their practice back home. At the top and left corner of the
screen is a picture of Mrs. Bella Chudi, who is a PhD student at UNN, who has gone back and incorporated what she learned in one class on data methods and analysis at Michigan State University into her master's level data analysis certification. We also have a scholar who has recently graduated from Federal University of Technology, Mina, who has been working with an advisor who also teaches chemistry, and they are working on a manual on cost-benefit analysis for a particular Ministry of Agriculture to understand how to prioritize various areas in their state related to their priority crops, fish and rice. She's been working even as she has gone back to Nigeria and completed her graduate work. This program uses social media platforms. So we have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and we use that to enhance dissemination outreach and also to engage with interested stakeholders. Currently, we have over 1,600 followers. And then I want to now end with two stories and talking about how scholars support ongoing USAID efforts in Nigeria to strengthen research capacity and stakeholder engagement, and also how they are being supported to take their work further. The first example I want to give is from Mrs. Toyin Ademola, who is actually a food technologist from Federal University of Technology, Abeokuta. She came to Michigan State University and did work on food safety issues, particularly aflatoxins and aflatoxin contamination in Nigeria. She went back home after doing her work. She has published 2 peer-reviewed publications in international journals. She went back and did a training for 125 extension agents, leaders, and selected community leaders on issues related to food safety, particularly related to maize and the maize value chain. 125 extension agents and community leaders that she trained in 4 states have now gone on to train over 6,000 households about how, through better management practices and processing practices, they can reduce contamination of their maize and maize-based products from aflatoxins. This is just an example, and she was supported by the project to translate her research findings. It's a picture of her in an MSU lab where she was testing samples of maize products for their aflatoxin levels. And she went back home and has done the dissemination by training one to train others, where she trained 125, and those 125 went on to train over 6,000. And you can see of those who she trained, organizing community events in their villages and in their communities to disseminate this information. And then I want to move from food safety to soil health. Talking about Dr. Blessing Agada, who has been one of our dynamic scholars, who has only in this particular topic trained a team who have then gone on to train over 820 agri students just in her university. Dr. Agada came to Michigan State University and was conducting research on the important soil physical properties for farmer productivity and how soil physical properties directly affect productivity, but also directly affect productivity through impact that they have on the yield response for organic fertilizer application and other agronomic practices. And she was specifically looking at maize farmers. Particularly relevant because we have a lot of efforts going on in Nigeria to increase the productivity of farmers. Some of them, for example, the dollars or naira that have been spent on fertilizer subsidy programs in Nigeria. Those programs are focused on increasing farm use of inorganic fertilizer. And there has been research that has been done by Professor Chudi and many that have talked about the importance of soil health and soil chemical properties on the yield response and how that is very important for us, even our fertilizer recommendation. But Nigeria that have shown that it's not the case that in every part of Nigeria fertilizer use is actually low. But in certain areas, even where farmers are using fertilizer, the yield when they're using fertilizer is often low because of the condition of our soils, the soil chemical properties. Dr. Agada's research demonstrates the importance of these soil physical properties, even beyond the chemical properties, for promoting soil productivity. When she came to Michigan State University, she was so engaged in so many different dimensions. She went back to Nigeria and introduced an app that can help farmers and extension agents to support farmers in making good, sustainable management decisions. Subsequently, she worked with 10 directors and 8 graduate students on methods of soil extraction for pest, chemical and physical properties, and then moved on to train over 800 students in her faculty. So Agada had led a collaborative effort between GS University, the Nigerian Policy Activity, and UNN, the Department of Soil Science, where she actually introduced her soil science lab to some updated methodologies for soil analysis that she had witnessed at Michigan State University. She led a team of students, part of this idea of train one to train others. She's always carrying her students along. She led teams to extract soil samples from around Benue State, have them analyzed, and then has been working subsequently to prepare the soil map for Benue State to guide fertilizer use and management practices. And this is the first of such maps to be produced, but we pray definitely not the last. I put the fact that this activity that Dr. Agada has done is a demonstration of how scholars are coming up with innovative ideas about how to get work further. I remember several conversations I had with Dr. Agada here at Michigan State University, where she shared these ideas and this desire to take her research further and translate her findings into different kinds of mechanisms that can actually be read and useful by stakeholders, the farmers in her state. She started in Benue, but I'm sure we're not going to stop in Benue, but we must pledge this step. And so I want to welcome you once again to today's soil map presentation and discussion, and thank you again for taking time to join us and taking time to be here. I want to leave us with this idea of molten in parable, much in a little. Train one to train others is really important for sustainability. Capacity building efforts with a small number of dynamic and innovative scholars can achieve much. Thank you for your time and welcome once again.
Thank you very much, Professor sabidasi, for the welcome address. We'll also have the Vice Chancellor of JS Dakar University, who is effectively represented by the Dean, Faculty of Agriculture, and give us a welcome address, because this program is being it's a collaboration between Michigan State University and JS Dakar University. The Vice Chancellor.
Thank you. Good morning, all. I'm here representing my principal, the Vice Chancellor of Physics, Untitled Chapter, who is not able to be here at this moment because of other two engaging, equally important engagement on campus. And he said to represent me here. Our assignment this morning is very simple, that I should welcome you.
Can I hear you?
Can I hear you?
Your face,
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. So I said our assignment here is very simple, is to welcome each and everybody here. And before I proceed, let me just lean on the existing protocol, which recognizes everybody seated, those online, within and outside the country. The University of Agriculture, now known as Joseph Sarwan Taka University, is a university that has the vision and mandate to take research output to the gates of the farmers and transform the farmers from being subsistence to profitable farming, and they can make life out of farming. And as a university, we are proud to collaborate and identify with this project, the Nigerian agricultural project activity, also known as Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project. We, as a university, are eager to collaborate when it comes to such work, because we know that the output of such work is in line with our vision and mandate, and it will help in alleviating farmers' problems and help them get more productivity. It is a known fact that one of the major factors in production is that of soil. Not just that it anchors our plants, but it's also the source of providing nourishment to the plants that help in the productivity. Today, as we are here on this workshop, to look at the activities that these projects have done through our staff, Dr. Blessing Agada, in conjunction with other collaborating professors who are already seated here, Professor Abe and Professor Ali. As a university, we wish you a happy deliberations, and we pray that the aim of this workshop will be achieved. And as we hope that as we launch this productivity index map for Benue State, it will reach out to as many people as possible, and especially the farmers will benefit from it and it will boost their yields. On this note, I want to welcome each and every person here and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chancellor. We'll move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is the presentation by Dr. Blessing Agada, who has led this research, and we are thankful to JS Kaka because as a doctoral student, she also had
information with respect to increasing their yields around maize-based systems. So I'll just go straight into this. The findings and the official launch of the soil index is what I'm presenting on. Okay, so there's a teaser, and that's my outline. Research questions / objectives. The introduction, previous findings that will help build the background to what we are here for today. The methodology used, the results, conclusions, and recommendations. My recommendations is in twofold, one for us and one for the policymakers. So my teaser is, what do you love most about? Taking 20 centimeter depth of soil, as you can see from the picture. We had no soil to make any ridge. So if the farmer was losing that over time, then at the point we will get stuck like this. Because most of the soils around the area we want were shallow. And we noticed that even when we went to the different local governments, like in Boko and Shongu, we find very shallow soil. Sometimes effective depth is about 45 centimeters. So if you keep losing, then you are losing both nutrients, losing both the particles, and after a while there won't be anything to use to make any ridge. So we did that, we used the hybrid seed, and even though we used the fertilizer at the recommended rate for the area, I'm going to show you what happens with the results. Next slide. So this is the effect of this resurfacing, or erosion as you call it, simulated erosion, at 5, 10, 15 centimeter and 20 centimeter of loss of soil. As that happened, we're losing the organic carbon content, and we're also losing the nutrients, because the organic problem is your binder with respect to the inorganic fertilizer you're bringing into the farm field. So if you're losing that, you're also losing that. So at each depth, we're losing organic carbon, as you can see from the graph. Then our bulk density was increasing, which is not wise for root elongation and for even the growth of the plant. So when you keep having that increase in bulk density by the reason of this loss, then you will still not get the yield that you desire. So those were one of the effects that we saw. I'm going to run through this because it's a little bit of statistics. And then with the effect of the soil loss on the yield across these steps, you see that for the 20 centimeter that we had the lowest of yield, that was significant across. And the policy brief was brought out from this particular research that at 10 centimeter, if you are losing 10 centimeter, even if you are adding fertilizer, you will still not get the desired yield. And that is why we are still below global averages. Now, so the implication of this topsoil loss is you lose this, your crop yield suffers, operational cost increases, your soil quality degrades, carbon stock depletes, nitrogen leakage from the system, which leads to climate change issues, the greenhouse gas emissions and all that. And then siltation and sedimentation, and you can lose your habitat, affecting the biodiversity around your farm field. So, way forward, as I mentioned earlier, is a holistic look, not just at the chemical fertility as we do, but putting into factor the physical, chemical, and the biological as a whole. How? Through soil testing. And that's why the project decided to fund the soil test. We know that smallholder farmers will not necessarily test their field because of the cost. So Michigan State University, through the Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project, decided to fund this soil testing. Now, this information of the soil test has implications, because then you know what nutrient is deficient in your field and know how to go about it, how to go about fixing those deficiencies. So without this soil test, you can't move forward around your fertilizer applications. So it's an important factor in the whole equation of production. So this is still some of the importance of soil testing continue. Let's go to the PDF that is done now. So this summary here shows you the essence of doing the test, having a healthy soil. Because when you don't, the implications is not just to the soil itself, it's to the crop and to we, the humans that are eating the soil, as well as the environment where we are living. So it's a holistic thing. When it's fixed, we are fixing not just the soil, the crop, we are fixing ourselves, we are fixing the environment. Now, the methodology we use for this, I'm narrowing down now to the productivity map, was to go to 3 local governments at the initial phase. We sampled 10 farmers in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture, the regional officers of the Ministry of Agriculture. And then with these 10 farmers in 3 local governments, we'll go to their field and take at 3 different points within each of their farm field at 3 different depths, get out soil samples to test. When we did that in the first phase, we saw that the sampling size was small, so we increased it to 7 local governments, totally 10 local governments in Benue State. So the LGS prone to soil erosion, and which were maize cultivators, because remember we said it was a maize-based system that we had focused on, were those that we identified and went to. And then georeference soil sampling and in-situ reading with the sensor machine was used to collect samples as well as read for nutrient elements. Structural questionnaires were also given. Now, the laboratory test results were converted into sufficiencies that were fed into the soil productivity equation according to NEL. It was NEL productivity index that we used. And these sufficiencies were multiplied, and then the sums at different depths were also used to get the cumulative. So your PI is a function that collected the samples in the field at 2 depths, and then we're also using the sensor machine to pick in-situ readings. In-situ means on the spot. We're getting those readings for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, available water, and the others were in the lab. And that's why we had to take some of the students to UNN in Suka, because there was a collaboration between us to have them go there to analyze this soil and also learn and explain them next week. So, while at Usuka, we dried the samples and then sorted, relabeled, and prepared them for analysis in the lab next time. Yeah, so this is us with the students, and then with some of the students and technical staff in the lab at UNN in Usuka. Alright, so aside just getting the samples, we established relationship with these farmers, from Duma local government to Opoku to Boko to Shombu Pande, all of these places that we went to. Because when you build loyalty, it's easier for you to come back to help them adapt to the new change. So we established relationships with these farmers. And then capacity building of the extension agent as well as the students. So, and then teaching them how to use the land biggest app that I learned how to use while I was at Michigan State University, that you will get on-the-spot assessment of your soils in the field. Yeah. So, results. That we can go straight to seeing the map. I know you are eager to see the map. Some of the questionnaires that were given out, we were trying to see how it was for the farmers to be able to get input to their farm field, whether it was inorganic or organic. We didn't check, we just asked input. And how close we are to receiving extension advice. And this is what we got. So the distance from homestead to any extension service.
Okay, yeah.
This is in kilometers, and this is your frequency. That's how we got that. So we are seeing some as high as 15 kilometers away from where they can get extension service, 18 and all that. And then for those that were to get fertilizer from any fertilizer dealer, whether organic or inorganic, it still played out that way. The distance was also far. And that has cost implication on whether the farmer will want to go and get this fertilizer or any input to put on his farm field. Then we also asked a few questions with respect to whether they understood the need for testing their soil, and if they did, if they had heard about this, or anybody had advised them for the need to do those. And these were the answers that we got. People that answered yes to knowing that they were supposed to test their soils, 20%. While those that knew, the person that received any form of advice was also 20%. So that tells us that we have work to do with our DOs, putting them information, the right information in their hands to pass on to the farmers. And that's why we are doing this map. So with gender, we're looking at age and gender around the words that we're going. And we saw that most of the male, because you see the orange looking chart is the male, we had more male that were aged, and the women were younger than the male. So those were one of the things we observed from the results the data that we collected. Now, the variability of the soil productivity index after we had fed it into the formula, as I said, across the words, shows that within a word you also have variability. So you cannot just end with saying, use this kind of recommendation across board. If within a word we're seeing this variable than that, some 0.0, and it was significant across. So across local governments, you find that it was significantly low, or you find no significance. But there was this variability that was playing in the field. Now, the same thing goes with the governments. You see that for Markurdi and within Markurdi local government, we had 3 words, like kilogram. Sorry, it's grams per centimeter cube, and then others having mean, this is the box plot, having their mean values still below. So that physical, chemical, or biological are changing. And it was also significant. So now the fertility maps that we have, or we have right now that we are working on, are something like this. Now, this whole broad area is telling you, based on the color, that the organic, this is for, organic carbon. This whole area is telling you that the organic carbon is around 0.1, 0.4 to 1, right? And if you check, that's saying more than 10 states. If we are seeing that kind of variability across local government and words that we just saw, putting out that organic carbon for this whole area will not play out very well. So that was how we wanted to narrow down to Benue State, within Benue State, local government, within the local government, the words, within the words, down to the farmer fields. So that's how this came from. Next slide. So this is where we are. This is where we're going to. I'm very sure I'll be calling the GIS specialist to help us with respect to opening the map so you can see how it is. So this is Benue, and then the reference points that we picked were used to create for this is nitrogen. To tell you at this particular one, these areas, which is narrower now, closing down that variability that we have seen with respect to these nutrient elements, and then even onto the productivity index value. Next one. So this is also for catalog exchange, and then this is for the cumulative productivity index. So you can have these values right at your fingertip and it can be printed for Markurdi, printed for each of the local governments that we went to, and it has been used also to interpolate for other ones, at least streamlining and closing down that variability we had seen with the broader map of Nigeria. So, conclusions. With the free and open source interactive map based accessibility, then it can help with tailored recommendations for these areas. And then we have materials that have been translated into TIM and IDOMA for maize-based systems, working with the 4 nutrient management guide to help so the map can stand alone. The nutrient map can stand alone. You can use to create fertility management for farm fields, and we also have materials that you can also use. And then the map of the productivity also helps with you understanding the potential of this soil, what management you can keep to. If you are saying you're at 1, how do we 0.1? How do you get to 1? How do you maintain being at 1? That is the essence of this. Next slide. Now, I gotten this index model from the Benue State Policy on Agriculture, saying we should liaise with ourselves, the Benue State government, Akoi and others, and the farmers, and that's exactly what we're doing. I did this intentionally because my recommendation is going to be going towards the guys that, as the Benue State government, that works with the law, so that it's not just a research. We want to solve the problem and then get out policies that will affect this change. So, I earlier mentioned that my recommendations are 2 ways. The soil nutrient map will be used as a standalone tool. It will also be a management tool in the hands of our extension agents, our farmers themselves, those that have Android phones and all that, or their children. And then we will need to keep training our farmers, extension agents on good management practice. Knowing just that your soil is at this level and not doing anything will still not give us the yield that we desire. So, given the high intensity rains, as I mentioned, and temperatures, farmers should be advised to use both organic and inorganic amendments to improve the soil as well as yield. And then for policymakers, consideration of soil health in the design of programs like Anchor Borrowers Program or what name we want to call it, should factor in soil tests and fertility recommendations in existing ones as clusters or as individuals, so that the goal is achieved, or we just keep wasting our monies and doing seconds. Complementary actions to fertilizer subsidy, such as improving farm fertilizer use techniques, because it's not just knowing what to put, it's putting it the right way, because I mentioned in that 4N nutrient management guide, that you need to know how the right source, the right amount, the right rate, and then the right place to place it. The farmers need to know, because we were in a field, let me just quickly say this story, in Lesser, and the farmer thought he was putting SPSS on his soybeans. But when we got to the field, I was like, what fertilizer do you use? It was really going very vegetatively, it was looking beautiful, luscious soybeans field. But there were no seeds. And I told him, let me see the bags that you got from the fertilizer dealer. And he brought NPK and urea. And I said, this doesn't work for cereal, for legume-based crops. It will just be growing vegetatively, and it will not give you any pod. So they need to be taught, we need to educate them, and the extension agents need to understand these fertilizers for each of these crops, what it entails, and how to go about it. So we need to put this, we also need to put checks on adulterated fertilizers. I tested some fertilizers recently, and boy, it's not something to talk about. But there was one that stood out, that I had to call colleagues like, look, I've not seen fertilizer this good in a long time. We need to check that, we need to put those checks to be sure that fertilizers that we are giving to our farmers are not adulterated, and they are not on the web bags with misbranding, misleading information. And then ensure that for all the advertised organic fertilizers, because that's a new thing everywhere, organic fertilizers, but there are no trials. There are no trials. How do you know the things they say is going to work for this environment, it's going to work for the crops that you are doing? So we should ensure that these organic fertilizers go through some form of trials, and then we can have them certified and then pass them on to our farmers. So thank you for listening. These are references. I appreciate you. I'll be calling on.
what are the functions of the map here. So basically, this shows us the what each and every of these widgets do. And the next one there shows the layer list. So these are the layers that Dr. Agada was talking about earlier. So the first one, this is the Benue word. So let me mark everything. Okay. So these are the points that were visited during the research. So these are the places that I visited for the project. So this one shows the productivity index by depth. So as you zoom in, you can see there's a legend there that shows the high and the low. So the purple shows where there's very low productivity index, while the lighter yellow shows where there's high productivity index. So that's the Benue ward, the local government, and their names for government, and the state. So the first map is the cumulative productivity index. So this shows the range of the cumulative productivity index ranging from 0 to 1. But here it is 0 to 0.7. That's the highest the range. While the next one is the productivity index per depth. So this also shows the ratings too. So the ratings of this one too is from 0 to 1, and then here you see there's the range. They are divided into 5 classes. So it's easier for us. So we don't want to have 15 classes where to be ambiguous for us to understand. Right? So this is 5 classes. That's 0 to 0.4. That's the highest of the range. So the next one is the nitrogen. Also, this one too is in range as well. So this is measured in percentage. Next one, phosphorus. Also, it is in range too. Potassium, pH, water by depth, cation significant capacity, moisture content, organic matter, and then the last one, the bulk density, and the last one, textural class. So this textural class, let me just explain this. The textural class is in the 6 classes. This is clay, we have clay loam, we have loam, loamy sand, and so silt loam as well. So that's it about the layer list. The third on the widget is the legends. So let's say I just want to know what are the ranges. What are the explanations? What are the ranges? You could just see the legend here. You see what's the range of each of every of those ones I've been talking about. The ranges of potassium, what is measured in, and every other thing. And while this one is the share. So the fun part of this is that this particular application could be embedded. Let's say, for example, Benue State who have this live in real time on their website where anyone can just go in. And instead of going through this, we just have it below or down part of the Benue State website where anyone can see and see the productivity index for the whole state. The fourth one is the analysis. Let's say I'm a technical person as well. I know a little bit of GIS. I want to do analysis. I could use that part to analyze on certain parts of the map. And then the next one is the base map gallery. So I can change this. The down part is starlight imagery, but then we can change it to dark, light, any other base map that you want to exchange it with. And why the next one is the add data. the good part of this is that I can actually add the data to this. So let's say I'm a farmer, a small farmer, and I have my mobile phone. I can walk around my farm and take the boundary of my farm. And I'm in the Benue state, right? So I can come to this portal and I can put my data in immediately, and I'll know the nutrients or the nutrients of my farm. Those very easy. That I can take it to anyone. You can do that yourself by adding using this widget, by adding your data. So this one's for drawing. You can draw any part of the map to show what you're experimenting. Again, this is a widget where you can use to filter your map and filter the attributes you want. And want to know, let's say I want to know all the zeros, all the area in Benue State that have 0 as a productivity per depth. So I can put 0 there and show me those areas and to zoom to that area for me. So this is the next one is select attributes, it selects any part of the map. While the next one is a query. What this query does is it works like the filter as well. So let's say I want to query a part of Benue State, or I want to query a particular government in Benue State, and I want to have the results. So this can help me. I can immediately query that part. I want to know the areas that have 0 or 1 productivity index, and I can query that part and immediately to really bring the results out, and that result will be added to the layer list on this same portal. This is your video valley. This is the video talks about the vision of Nigeria and where Benue falls to 32 degrees, 32 knots. That's where Benue is. And this is a measurement widget. You can measure any part. You can measure your boundary. You can know in hectares, in acres, and anything. And this is a summary. Just shows a summary of each index. So. Okay, so shows them just the sum of the potassium, the sum of the pH, and so on. While this shows the max, the mean, and the sum for the productivity index and the cumulative index. So lastly, this is the last widget there. So you can print this out. Let's say I want to print out what is on this map. Or let's say I want to go to my local government, or my local government, I'm from the local government in Benue State, and I want to have a map for Benue State. So after doing the filter, I can actually print that out in PDF and have a hard copy of this. So that's the fun part of it. So I can print that out and have that. So that's everything we done here. You can change the title, you can do a lot of other things here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Caleb. Mr. Caleb was the one that helped us with the design of the map, interactive map. And you just shared the link online. We're also going to be sharing the link here, so you can connect and experience it on your own handheld device, or if you want to have it on your system, it will still work. We wanted him to do this presentation so you can have an idea of navigating the map. Now, the map has just been unveiled for us, but it could, as I said earlier during the presentation, it could stand alone this way, or if you need help with respect to our divisional officers of AGRIC and our ADPs, they will also have a WhatsApp group where if you have any challenge later on with respect to using it, you will still guide at that level. So right now we're going to see how that can be shared for us to also have here, because it's been shared live already for the audience that are live. I want to appreciate everyone again. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agada and team. Would I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Agada. My name is Dr. Chris Adaba, coming from Center PS2. I just have two questions. One is, I don't know if you considered solar activity index in your yield model, your yield function model. Okay. Yeah, because I was listening to you and I feel that if you include that in your yield function, it's going to really give you a lot in your information about your yield. For example, I'm not an agricultural expert, but I did something with my MSc student. We tried to look at the effect of solar activity on yield. We considered the first part we did yield of yam and cassava, and then the second part the second student did on grains. But unfortunately, we didn't look at this aspect. So I'm thinking that if we could find a way, when I was looking at your way forward, if we could find a way of combining that which we did and this one in the yield function, then we should be able to have a comprehensive situation of the yield situation in Benue State. That's one aspect. Then the second aspect is, this one is a question. If you could throw more light on the yield function, the parameters you use in the function, and just more light on the yield function, because I missed that part. I couldn't really follow. So I'll be happy to hear you throw more light on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agada. Any other questions?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Blessing Agada. My name is Dr. Moses Tule, Omega Fertilizer. Apparently, we produce the fertilizer that the researcher made reference to during our presentation. Now, the question I want to ask is, discussing soil yield and productivity, I think there's an additional input from the first question, but did the researcher consider the impact of chemicals, either they be pesticides or weedicides, that impact the microorganisms in the soil? Or is it just the washing away of the topsoil and how it impacts on soil productivity? What would be the impact of these chemicals that are being used now? Not just the inappropriate inorganic fertilizers, but also other chemical inputs that actually impact the productivity of the soil. I think I would like some clearance on that. Perhaps that could be an additional factor in your model if you add the impact of solar. And then the last question I would like to talk about is the issue of soil variability across wards and then across the local governments and across the state. Where I haven't had the benefit of looking very granular at the granular data at the ward level to be able to study how much of either potassium or potassium, nitrogen is lacking in any particular ward, in any particular local government across it. But I believe from the presentation the research assistant did here, perhaps the study covered those aspects of that variability across the state. And I would think that to that extent that it covers that, then it becomes a very, very, very useful instrument, especially for the extension workers in the state. And this is where I think both the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and the State Ministry of Agriculture have a stake in the work that is presented to us here today. If you have this kind of, and then of course, other states that are either here present or that are not here present, I think this kind of work, if it's extended to other states, certainly we should see some level of increased productivity, not just in Benue State, but across the states in the country. I just want to commend this work. It's really very good work and initiative from the Joseph Sawantaka University to get into areas like this. They have, I believe, they will also take up other very challenging areas to agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have a question online from I think Ode Ojo, EEAC. Before we have a question.
Yeah, I can't hear you well.
Yes, we can.
Who are you giving permission to ask questions online?
Ode Ojo, your hand is up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, we hear
Hello,
you.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello, yes, we hear you.
First, I want to commend Dr. Agada. I am one of his beneficiaries. He has been to my farm to do soil testing, and I am also the chairman of advisory council to Benue State government, as well as a member of the presidential advisory council. So I take this presentation very seriously. As a background, you will recall now that the last 18 months or so, food inflation has been the driver of inflation in Nigeria. And I think in July last year, Benue was had the highest food inflation rate among other states in the country. So this study is very important. So my concern now is how we can ensure that this kind of study finds its way to policy decision making. Particularly, I want to find out what steps we have to scale up the impact of these studies to reach the actual farmers out there. That is my major concern. And I'm a beneficiary and I'm hoping to benefit more. But how do we scale up this result in terms of policy and actually get into the farmers to ensure that productivity is increased, output is expanded, and there is food security in the state? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll take one more question and then Dr. Blessing will respond.
Good afternoon, everybody. Doctor, this is a very good presentation. I commend you for that. I just have one question. The productivity index taken in Benue State, is it on a particular crops or on all the crops? Thank you.
Good morning, all. I'm James Sekoda. I'm the agricultural production officer to Impact Value Chain Development Program in Benue State. We add value to rice and cassava. I thank Madam so much for the presentation because she has done a lot of job. I worked in the field for the past almost 2 years on production. Then, from what the little experience we have in the field, I feel it's necessary for us to share it here. Because the essence of this presentation is to increase productivity among farmers in Nigeria. One of our key things which I think we have to share is that farmers' productivity is not just based on soil environment. The soil is a key thing to productivity, but there are other things which are very vital. One is the inputs that we use. And why I'm saying so is that we have policymakers like our father, Professor Ojo, has just spoken. He said, how can we take this into the farmers in the field? One basic question or basic issue which we have been trying to solve is the dearth of extension officers in the field. We don't have extension people in the field, and we have policymakers. The few extension people in the field are not enough to cover what farmers actually need. We need the state government, the federal government to ensure that extension workers are engaged so that they can transmit these findings to farmers for increase in productivity. Then the second major thing which I want to say, one of the contributors has partially mentioned that, is that the fertilizer, the NPK fertilizer you have in the field, is not meeting the requirement. So in essence, it's contributing to low productivity in the field. About 2020, we had supposed to take some samples to Professor Ali to analyze for us. We realized that most of the fertilizer brands in the market are below 50% of what is required.
Thank you.
And the businessmen are producing these brands of fertilizer that are not meeting the requirements in the field. How do we solve that problem? The herbicides that we use in the field are adulterated. How do we solve that problem? I'm begging the representative of the Vice Chancellor that the university should use this opportunity to tell the government that producers of fertilizer, especially NPK in Nigeria, are shortchanging farmers because it's contributing to low productivity. Therefore, farmers who are taking little loans from the bank because of the low productivity cannot pay their loans back. Last 2 weeks, the Central Bank of Nigeria, through Anchor Borrowers Program, said Benue State farmers are not paying their loans. And they said that Benue is owing about 296 million naira out of 301 million that we are giving to farmers on loan. If their productivity is very low, how can they make money to pay their loans? And it's not because the farmer is not just wanting to pay the loan, it's because the productivity is low. If I am expecting 6 metric tons for a hectare of rice, and you produce just 1 point something, the 1 point something, what you have done is to use the money to pay for the labor, pay for other management services. So how do you get profit to go and pay back your loan? Let them help us by publicizing the conclusions that Madam has given, that these things are happening in the field. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll start with the solar activity. When I did this, if you recall one of the slides, I said we had simulated erosion and then planted maize to see how if you were losing your nutrients. So we were working around the solar. Now, because the sun is already there, providing solar, right? That is like a constant. These associations under you, and it will maybe help us know how we are going to get this out to all of these associations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agada. So this segment of the workshop is simply so Dr. Agada and her team have led research. They presented the research. Now, one thing the policy project emphasizes is how do you link research to policy? And so everything we do, we try to engage with policymakers at different levels. Now, so what we are going to try and do here is to further have our panelists link, okay, this is an output. For instance, Professor Agbe and the faculty members, how can we move this knowledge forward, okay, so that it doesn't stay on the shelves? Beneficiaries, farmer groups, how can they use this? I didn't want to do impromptu driving, but it looks like I will ask, we have policy makers here. So which of the directors, please, would, or maybe the investment person, because how can you turn this into a business? I say because there's a business opportunity. I think I'm tired. So please, could you join us as a panel so that we can have your own thoughts on this and then go into questions? Yes. Questions? Yes, sir. So we have a director from Kaduna State Investment Promotion Council who will be joining us. So it's going to be very brief because we are running out of time. So we'll start with from just 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I was sitting close to Professor Abi, who is our father. I thought he was going to do the job. Then Dr. Mrs. Agada is Professor Abi's granddaughter. Why Agada is my daughter? Ali trained me and I trained Agada. And so the training still continues. I was happy to see her present this. What I have to say within 2 minutes is that soil is difficult to understand. Very, very difficult. In teaching my students, I used to tell them that medical doctors will tell you the discipline is very difficult because they are dealing with patients' human life. But doctors, veterinary doctors will tell you that their own discipline is difficult and messy. They are dealing with animals that don't talk. So yes, soil doesn't talk and don't even move. So until you dig into the study of the soil, you come to discover that it's one of the difficult aspects. So I was just wondering when she was presenting. You can imagine the quantum of money and resources that are needed for this kind of research. And so it's just a little of what she needs to do. Talking about models, you know, the applicability of the models is environmentally dependent. And so you need to test each of the models. This is just one of them. We have very simple and complex model that has to do with productivity. Professor Ali used to tell us that fertility and productivity are different things, or they are like husband and wife. But it's not all fertile soils that are productive soils, right? Productivity is a function of chemical fertility, biological, and what? And physical. And so a soil that has all of the chemicals needed but it's not physically fertile will not be productive. So you see why there's every need for you to do the productivity ratings, because there's variations across space and time. And so you need to do the assessment over time, you need to do the assessment. So continuous evaluation of the soil is what we're talking about. Somebody asked the question, why is it that a crop was not done? You can revalidate the model with the crop in each particular environment. And you can also do what we call component analysis. In each environment, there is analytical factors that are contributing to the productivity of a particular crop. And so if you do that, you discover that the components that are contributing to the productivity in an environment will be different from that of the other environment. So let me quickly say that some of the benefits of this model. One, you know, somebody asked a question about, you know, contributed that loans are given and are not paying back. Ministries and parastatals like NAPP can use this model, can use this index, productivity index, so that they don't just give out loans. They give out loans to farmers based on what they are doing and based on the productivity of the environment. Is that okay? Elsewhere, somebody told us that loans are given, taxes are paid on the basis of the index. How productive? You don't just charge a farmer that is, you know, in those days they would just say, okay, it's workers that are paying unilateral taxes now. But payment of taxes to farmers are based on the indexes of the productivity of the farms. You don't just tell me that the productivity of Markurdi. One of my PhD students just defended last week. Productivity assessments of the soils of the Southern Guinea Savannah, involving Lafia, Markurdi, Nasarawa, what they call it, Niger and the rest of these places, and discovered that Markurdi is more fertile, more productive. And so you want to tax a farmer in Markurdi who has the environment more conducive and more productivity than the same farmer in Niger State. So actually government agencies can use this. Government can also use this to tax farmers. NADA, who is the agency, thank God that government has just resuscitated NADA. And so their functions is to develop plans and give out to farmers. And so on the basis of the productivity of different locations, they can decide to give the location based on what? Based on the productivity of the environment. So this is one of the benefits of some of these, the output of this research. Now that government agencies can regulate on this and to help themselves. So time will not permit me to say all that like I wanted to say, but there are a lot of things to say concerning this. All that cannot be said within this setting, because it's actually difficult to understand. I thank my lady, my daughter, she was presenting, I think she presented in a manner that every one of us will understand. If we're actually going to present at that PhD level, then it will not make meaning to all of us. But the bottom line take home is, what is this index of a team going to be beneficiary? I think that should be our take home. And our take home is that we need to do this in all the environment because of the variability of the soil, both in terms of space and time. And so continuous assessment of the productivity is what we should be preaching here. And I urge each and every one of us here to at least take a benefit of this, that productivity is key, and we must go back. If we are in charge of ministry, if we are there are people that represent ministries and parastatals and government here. Tell them that there are a lot of things that we need to do to make this productivity of the team more than what you are saying. Thank you. I think I will stop at that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I want to also stand on the existing project. I want to appreciate Dr. Agada for the model and to put it as a thought to have brought this. And we also start with our own states. We in soil science, we have been having issues because the government does not listen to the soil scientists. Because the soil form the basis for whatever that we do. What I tell my students, I say that without soil, there is no life. And soil is also a living entity. But a lot of things that human beings do to this soil, we need to resuscitate this soil in order to survive the human existence. And so, the soil has been neglected. In the time past, the lecturers and the surveyor will go to the field to survey using the manual aspect of this survey. I think I was privileged to be on the field at the initial time when we were involved with the land PKS on the spot assessments of the productivity of the soil. And I was baffled and I was interested. I even downloaded the app immediately. I think one of my master students is also working on that now. And for us now that this message has been brought to us, few of us are here, but it has to have a multiplier effect. We are in government places and we also have the people in government that maybe the House of Rep member and all the sort of them that we have. But how do we move this message? How do we work on this to reach every one of them? Because soil testing is expensive. If you don't have the money, you cannot go to test the soil. But the map is available. And even the fertilizer is not available. They were talking about the fertilizer. Last 2 years, I worked on MTK 2010, and it was a mess on the field. And I called and I said, hi, where can we get this? That's why is this coming to us like this? But now we have the information, but it formed the basis for whatever that we are going to do on the field. The research institutes can use this. In fact, when you want to get information, like now I want to get an information from America, they have their own. There are some keys that we have and some information we have on net to get their information, but it's not applicable to here. But we thank God that we have one here. But to reach the people, please
we should have to spread the news across to the government agency in order to improve the soil. Somebody asked on the solar issue. Yes, we're having a challenge via the climate change, which is now a problem. She works already on the erosion aspect to determine the productivity. But most of these soil land are being eroded by the effects of this climate change, the impact of climate change. I was on the field with farmers and I was teaching them in terms of, if you have this, then how do you maintain this soil? That the close spacing of soil, of planting of material, also reduce the impact of rainfall that will reach the soil in order to remove this or increase the bulk density of the soil. So we have a way of getting across to the local people. I think I've worked with some extension agents passing this message across to them, and this will also be very helpful. The extension agents will benefit. And I was also trying to work on a case, and then the House of Rep member sent their message. He said, do you have a blueprint? So if we can have a way, like the University of Agriculture, now yes, Dhaka University, we have a way, since they have a link with this, if they can submit this as a blueprint also to the government, so that the government now will enhance this and then pass the information across to the farmer. Then the people that are coming to investors are coming in to do one thing or the other. They also benefit from this. I think I was surveying a place in in Away local government in Nasarawa State. With these results were taken to Australia. There was an investor that wanted to come in, but they don't have this. But now, Benue State has this. Any investor that is coming from outside will be able to use this, and then they come to invest in Benue. The land will be given to them, and then we'll have food sufficiency. Thank you very much, because I don't think
Thank you very much, Dr. Mano. We now have Dave Raquel, who is the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd like to appreciate every single person for being here. It's an honor to be making a statement before one of my lecturers, Professor Ali, who taught me soil chemistry in Markurdi. How can we get this information diffused down to the grassroots, to Benue farmers to actually benefit from them? At the level of the Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Markurdi, we observed a few years ago that the efforts that farmers are putting in terms of finance, energy, and time is no longer commensurate with the yield that comes from the farm at the end of the day. And this is as a result of soil degradation to an extent, the overuse of soil, because it's hard to have shifting cultivation these days. In the days of our fathers, we used to have that. And land will be allowed to fallow for a year or two, so that when you come back to it, it has regained some of its natural potential that support plant growth. But these days, because of a shortage of land due to displacement of people, crisis, whether it's farmer health, whether it's communal, has forced land to be overused. So land is used year in, year out, year in, year out. In some cases, even 2 or 3 times a year. And every time chemical inputs are continuously applied, it has caused the land to become weak to an extent, and that has dropped the yield. So without this information, on our own, we try to see how we will sensitize farmers on the wise use of inputs, and then more use of organic inputs. Because there are inputs we tried in 2019. We did some trials with some farmers, and we saw that the results they got was commensurate with what the dealer or the manufacturer told us about those inputs. They gave them to us for free, and we distributed to farmers. And we saw results because we kept track on what they were doing. So we have seen that worked. So we now went on the sensitization that if you use these inputs, they were organic inputs, so to say, they were organic inputs. They will help in rejuvenating your soil, they will help in giving you a healthier produce, and then they also boosted yield, even raising the tonnage per hectare. So with this information now, I think we are going to leverage on what we already started, and we'll make greater progress, and it will help farmers to adopt. You know, it's difficult for the farmer to change his mind about his traditional method, but if there is something, if there are results you can show him, you know, that will help him to adopt. So I think that is one way we will help to send this information down to the grassroots sensitization based on what has been done. The second tool we will use are trials, continuous trials. From my desk, under the able leadership of my director of Agri Services, we have come up with a program for the divisional agri officers, the DAOs, with the use of this same inputs I'm talking about. Every DAO in the 23 local governments of this state have at least 2 hectares of land that they can use. And they are the first port of call when it comes to extension from the headquarters of the state ministry. So we want a system where the DAOs will get supply of these inputs at the right time. They will do a demonstration, the 1 hectare cultivation. It's going to be like a loan program, but one of the targets is that they will have to use these inputs in the divisional office lands and make it possible for farmers to observe what they are doing and see that this is truly working, and it's an improvement over what they have been doing traditionally. So that is also one of the things we are going to employ. Those trials, we continue doing them. And when, you know, for a farmer, when he sees the result on the field, he takes the story himself to either his cooperatives or his associations or his cohorts or his family. Once he sees it, it's very easy for that to spread. So that's another tool. Another tool is legislation. One of our uncles here spoke about how can we control the spread, distribution, and sales of substandard or fake agricultural inputs ranging from fertilizer to herbicides, pesticides, and the rest. The state government has set up a committee right now as we speak called the Benue State Operational Committee on Fake and Substandard Farm Inputs. The State Ministry of Agriculture is part of that committee. The State Ministry of Industry and Investment is part of that committee. The Federal and the University of Agriculture, or now called JSTACA University, is part of that committee. There's a professor there on the committee, professor in crop production. The DSS is on that committee. SON is on that committee. NAPP is on that committee. It's called the Benue State Operational Committee on Fake and Substandard Farm Inputs. Recently, in our last meeting, the chairman House Committee on Agriculture was there present to talk to us about the legislative angle of their operation. So, once they get into full operation, the farmers, and the good thing about this committee is that the farmers came to cry out themselves, just like our daddy was crying here, that this thing is killing them, the fake inputs they are using on their farm. So they brought the idea, and the ministry supported them. They went to UniAgric and they drafted an MOU with the university. And even in the Ministry of Agriculture, the university is the institution that tests any input that we distribute to farmers from our ministry. So they have a role, a very big role in that committee. So with all these members, that committee is like a task force. And I assure you that from this season, we'll be able to control that to a level. And as we continue, you'll find out that the inputs we'll begin to use now will begin to help the farmers to yield more. The farmers know everywhere the inputs are sold. So since they form the larger group in the committee, they will help us to trace. And there's legislation that will back it. And recently they had a meeting and they drafted their areas of operation. And the commissioner is soon going to look at it and give us the final word. So these are the tools we are going to use to make sure this goes to the last man standing, who is the rural farmer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our last panelist is Godwin Jimmy from Agada Investment.
Good afternoon, all. I still want to stand on existing protocols. For us in the investment cycle, it's an opportunity to showcase what we have in Kaduna State. As we all know, we have so many value chains, agricultural products that we are working on in Kaduna State, and we are concerned on how to improve the yield of those agricultural products. The first one I want to talk about is we have a new value chain product that we are seriously working on in Kaduna State. That's the safflower and the saffron. And we also want to encourage other states to go into it. It's a value chain product that will give you a lot of money, They've tried, it's a pilot, they've tried a kind of a pilot program in 3 states in Nigeria, Kaduna, Plateau, and Edo states. And it turned out that Kaduna State has the highest yield. Not every land in Kaduna State. If you are going along Kaduna's area axis, that's where you get the highest yield of this safflower and saffron. So we are seriously working on that. The next one is ginger. Our ginger in Kaduna State, we all know, cannot be compared to any other ginger. And in Kaduna State, there are particular local government where you farm this ginger. If you transport it or if you take the seedling to another place and you farm it, you discover that you don't get that same spice. So I think this research is a welcome development in that area where we can test other parts of Kaduna State to see how we improve our ginger yield. I made mention of yesterday I made mention of 2019, 2020. There was available $3 billion in ginger market, but the whole of Nigeria we are only able to tap 10.3 million, and if you turn that into percentage, it's 0.35% out of 100. So it is an area that we can actually work on and see how we can turn it into value for investment and then to help our farmers. In Kaduna, so far so good, we have more than 5 fertilizers companies. More than 5 fertilizers companies that are operating in Kaduna. And we have to invite people from the Agri Department of ABU Zaria to test this fertilizer before we allow our farmers in Agada to make use of these fertilizers. We have OCP fertilizer, we have matrix fertilizer, we have flour mills fertilizer, we have Aldarama fertilizer, we have Barbados, and we have TAC fertilizers. These are fertilizers companies that are working to see how they will improve the yields of our crops in Kaduna State. So if probably you need a fertilizer that is very, very effective, you can visit any of these companies or you can get our contact and then we see how we can help you to get those fertilizers companies in, from Kaduna. And we also have a lot of agri-investment, most especially our maize. We also want to improve. We are #1 in maize production in Nigeria. We are #1 in tomato production. But we don't want to remain in that level. We still want to improve. And these are areas where farmers are taking advantage and then they are improving the economy of Kaduna State. Where our IGR used to be before, we've moved from that place. Every year, the last I can remember was 50 billion. Our IGR, the last I can remember. And this year we want to do ×3 of that. So these are areas where we actually are working on to see how we can improve. I want to appreciate the researcher for our work, and we'll key into that and see how we improve our yield in Kaduna State. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to make sure we try and wrap up in 5 minutes. So, do we have any contributions from? Yes. Thank you. Well, just please a question. Okay. So I'll just take. Yes, from Niger State, right?
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to remain in the existing protocol. My name is Alhaji Aliyu Ba from Niger State, Director Ministry of Agri. Now, I want to talk on the policy. When I had the tax officer, Minister of Agri, I want to add what he said, that you see, it will not be okay, or it will not be fine. We gather all of these professors and doctors here, and at the end, this paper, at the end, it will be put onto the table. I want to appeal. This sensitive issue like this, when it's coming up, at least if the number one citizen of the state is not here, at least the commissioner or the permanent secretary who attend council meeting should be here. Because we are talking of implementation. The professors are now talking about how they make funding, how they saw this, they define this, they define this. This woman didn't sleep, didn't sleep. But if there's no implementation, our aim of doing this is defeated. A way that they say we should remain behind to be able to carry these things to our state. In fact, I've started making contact on how to invite her to Niger. Because it's not the presentation I took, no, when she come to answer questions. That is when I discovered that she has done a beautiful work, because she stands matured on answering a question. You are a doctor. I believe very soon. So what I want to say in this, desk officer, convey this message appropriately, because we are just conveying to the director. The director, when it's not a good time with the permanent secretary, will not be able to give a correct information. And the permanent secretary has to convey to the commissioner. The commissioner is now to raise a motion in the council. Please, and I advise you, when we were chatting yesterday, I told you that every crop is supposed to have a tax officer. If you are a tax officer for the state, now provide tax officer for every crop. We have been talking about extension staff. That the extension staff, even if we gather just the way Doc said, that instead of keeping extension staff to do IT in the school, they should be spread to these farmers. Now, it's not spreading to the farmers. The state has to make a way of giving capacity building to these students. You will find out that the extension officer that don't even know how to use GPS. I think we have them. He don't know how to use GPS. So how is he telling you that this hectare of farm can do this, can do this? And we must be sincere. Please do the right thing at the right time. These professors, we use them, and when we use them, we dump their information. And that is what is happening in every state. Please, let's do the right thing. Thank you.
So we have the Honorable Commissioner of Agriculture represented by Mr. Thomas Unongo.
Good day, everyone. On behalf of the Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture, I welcome all of you. We want to appreciate the Michigan State University and the University of Agriculture, Markurdi, for supporting this very project. In fact, on our part, we mandated all our divisional agri officers to participate fully in this study. We want to appreciate Dr. Mrs. Agada. These findings to us will serve as a guide for us at the State Ministry of Agriculture in the procurement of our fertilizers in the next cropping season. Modalities are already in place for the procurement of about 150 trucks of assorted fertilizers, that is about 4,500 metric tons for distribution to all our divisional agriculture offices. So this study is going to guide us on what fertilizer is going to which local government. On a lighter mode, I don't want to talk too much. Professor Ali and Professor Wagner, my good friends, it's time to facilitate the promotion of this our great sister, Dr. Mrs. Agada, to join you at the rank of professors. The job is so wonderful. We appreciate you, honestly. For our visiting professor all the way from US, we were with you yesterday. A lot has been gotten from your visit to Benue. We want to remind you, you are in the food basket state of this very country. We are the leading producer in almost all the 7 major crops, both food and cash crops. We have a comparative and competitive advantage in the production of this crop. We are talking about small-scale farmers that constitute over the 95% of what we call the food basket. So this study is going to support us to retain the status of the food basket we are all known for. God bless everyone as we move out here to our areas. Thank you.
We thank Reverend Solomon for taking time to be with us, and we recognize Dr. Agada, representative of CAFTA of Benue State University. Now, I'll be doing us injustice if our great grandfather does not speak. So, sir.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this very program. I'm happy that our farmers and our government are beginning to realize that soil is one of the major components of any agricultural production. I happen to be on the board of NISA when they were doing their EOP for rice production at CBN. And I brought the issue of soil. I said, no. You are recommending 4 bags of fertilizer, 4 bags of NPK, and 2 bags of urea per hectare of fertilizer. And you don't know the soils you are going to apply this fertilizer. How can you do that? Then they asked me, how much will it cost to test or to sample and test 1 hectare of soil? I said, it's just 5,000. They said, no, that budget is not there. What is there is herbicide, fertilizer, and seed for the rice and all that. At that level, I presented an argument and the state was not necessary to test the soil. And I'm happy the state government is here. They have seen that there is no way you can ask a goat to lay an egg. A soil that cannot produce maize, if you like, carry all the fertilizer you have, go and put it. You will not get the required result. Know your soil and work with what it can give you. With that, you spend less. and have more. So this program today is an eye-opener for us, that our soil can be programmed, and from there, we have the best benefit from our soil. Thank you for coming, and I hope that this will be just the beginning of our interaction with farmers and everybody who is involved in agricultural production in Benue, in Nigeria, and all over the world. Thank you very much.
Go on to Vote of Thanks by Professor T. Benue.
That's my deal. It's my busy. I'm my deal.
Good afternoon. In the morning I was presenting the DC. Now I'm starting off at the D of the College of Agronomy, Joseph Sawantaka University, Markurdi. Before you go home and say the VC was the one that gave the vote of thanks, it's not the VC that did. He's now the dean. I sincerely want to appreciate the Almighty for the privilege, the opportunity for coming together as this, as a family with a focus on productivity in agriculture. It has made the day beautiful, and we thank God for that. I want to appreciate you that are all seated. Without you, there is no program like this. It is your presence, it is your contribution, it is your attention, it is your keen interest, and more importantly, it is what you will take out there that have made this program a success. So as you are going, take the message home. The soil is as productive as you manage it. And today you have the key to managing your soil as far as Benue State is concerned, which is the productivity index map produced here. And I think that this message will go far and near. Our sister is here, Dr. Blessing Agada. Her contacts are available everywhere. She's online, she's offline, she's everywhere. You can always meet her, and you can always meet us in the university for that. I want to sincerely appreciate the organizations that have made this possible. Without the funding, without the support, without the visionary idea of those organizations, this wouldn't have been possible. One of such organizations is the USAID, Feed the Future. I wish to sincerely thank them for this funding opportunity. The Nigerian Agricultural Project Activity, formerly known as Nigerian Agricultural Policy Project, I want to appreciate them for the funding this program and the whole activities. I also want to appreciate the collaborating university, Michigan State University. They have given a lot of backbone to what we are doing here. Both human resources, financial resources, and they were able to accommodate many of my colleagues over there to ensure that this activity went on smoothly. You had one of them give the remarks when we started. I don't want to leave out the university, because the University of Agriculture too, this is Sawantaka University, also played its own part, giving the leadership support and releasing students to participate in this program. As a matter of fact, it is because we want our students to be fully baked, not half baked, that we always find a way of incorporating them in functional programs that we bring them out to be the best. And today, you can hear some of the participants telling us that in the absence of extension workers, these fully baked students should be deployed to the work. I want to say that if our students are going to do the work, the government is supposed to employ people to do it. Let government also liaise with the university, who will also support fully. Thank you very much. Sincerely, I want to thank the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. The Commissioner is ably represented here with my dear friend, the Director of Agri Services, Unambo. Honorable Commissioner, sir, we have received your message. Under my deanship, I have evaluated, recommended, and Dr. Blessing Agada has gained double promotion. We are still going to do more until she gets what you said she gets. The professorship will not stop. So I thank all the directors that are here present. I thank all the farmers that are here present. I thank all that came from all over Nigeria. I thank those from online. And I thank the directors of departments of agri in the local governments that are here for making this occasion wonderful. I want to thank the panelists for highlighting and showcasing what we are doing and to improve the soil to give us more productivity. Just before I sit down, I want each and every person seated here to clap for himself for being here. Thank you all, and God bless us all. Thank you.
Please, let us come to the complete prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Mighty and living God, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for your protection. We thank you for making it possible for us, the children who gathered this day, to look into the future, to capture the future before it arrives. We thank you for the gift of intellect. We thank you for the brothers and the sisters who have come here to help us capture the future, feed the future. Your spirit of success has helped us to do much here. We beg that the same spirit before us outside here, that all that is said, all that is promised, will materialize, and the future be ours. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Lord be with you. May the blessings of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit come upon you all, and you both now and forever. Amen.
And then the final prayer by
Allah mun gode maka da ka kawo mu nan maza kamar da gidajen mu lafiya. Allah ka taimake mu, ka taimake abin da muka zo yi. Wanga mitin da wanga workshop da aka yi, Allah ya sa ya zama abin da za a koya. Allah ya sa ya zama abin da za a koya. Mu yi salati 10 ga Annabi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا ولا إلى بالله العظيم. I wish everybody safe journey to this destination. May God guide us. This training or workshop we have attended, let it be effective by people that are responsible for it. Let it be effective by people that are responsible for it. Let it be not resolved. And these professors, may God continue guiding you people, remain with us, and stay with us, and continue making our land a fertile land. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think lunch is served. Somebody call this to a close.